I'm so happy to see all of you, and I'll assume that everyone here has already voted.
Yes.
So you don't have to run out and vote before 8 o'clock. That's good. And you voted wisely.
Yes. Voted for the right person.
Before we have the privilege of hearing from our Attorney General, General Jennings, since this is a regular town hall meeting, I have a few announcements that I want to remind you of. Our Delaware Criminal Justice Council, which lays out priorities for criminal justice reform in the state, and is very involved actually with the Alliance, or we're very involved with them, has a series of public meetings. The next public meeting is going to be at the Georgetown Library on May 16th. That's this Thursday at 5:30. And I would encourage you, it's a good opportunity to talk to the council about your concerns, where you think they should go in terms of criminal justice reform. In the same way, I'm sure many of you have questions for our Attorney General in terms of where her office is going with criminal justice reform. So please join me at the library, the Georgetown Library. As you know, our March meeting was on racism and anti-Semitism, and that was step one. We are continuing the conversation on June 6th. We'll continue it at the Unitarian Church. And what we didn't offer you during that first town hall was statistics. What does racism and anti-Semitism look like in Delaware? What does it look like generally in the states? And so we've invited the Anti-Defamation League to come and talk to us on June 6th. And so I certainly hope that many of you who joined us 2 months ago will be there for that presentation. And that will lead us to other presentations. We're going to break out into small groups after that so that we can continue the conversation on looking at these two malignancies that continue to affect every aspect of American life. Okay, our June town hall meeting. Some of you think that we were going to have a discussion from a group called NOBLE, which is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Well, they decided last night that you were the wrong audience. That they thought the audience were young children, especially young African-American children, because the presentation that they do nationally, and they're a very big organization, they've been around for 30 to 50 years, travel around the country, or they're established in all the states, and they go into schools, and they go into community centers, and they go into big brothers and sisters, and they talk about, or they try to teach kids how to interact with law enforcement. So when I told them what this audience looked like, and you know how I usually describe it, they did not get the impression it was the right audience. So I said, we'll take it up with Commissioner Phelps, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, because this was his idea. I like the fact that we've grown so much that we don't go out looking for speakers, they call us. And Phelps had called us and said, I want you to have a town hall on Noble. And I said, okay. So anyway, he called, I guess they straightened things out and said, I'm not giving up, I still want that town hall. And he said, your audience is okay. I heard what you said to Noble about the audience. He said, what we want to talk about is, he said, I'll bring the police chiefs in the different areas in Sussex County with him to talk about community relations and the police department. What is he calling it? He has a name for it. Bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community. So I would encourage you, since this is something initiated by the Department of Corrections, to try to attend our June meeting. And that will be on June 11th. The other condition...
June 13th.
Pardon me?
June 13th.
I think it's...
The 11th, I think
It's the 11th.
Oh, was it the 11th?
Yes.
My apologies.
Thank you. Knowing I was going to be corrected, I checked my dates before I left.
I know, I'm so used to it.
The only thing I haven't done is, Bishop, the commissioner says that law enforcement has to meet at 6:30, not 7. And I said, if it's okay with the bishop, then you have to leave a little earlier. So, okay, thank you. We have a celebration coming up. We're not planning it, but the county is planning it. The country should be planning it. That's Juneteenth, and that's on June 14th. And we participated last year. In fact, we had great fun at Juneteenth. We were in the parade. What we didn't do was set up a table at the nearest school where it's held, and you'll get a flyer from us to give you more details. But I encourage you to save that Saturday and spend some time at the Juneteenth celebration. I don't know if I've said much to you, but I want to commend our education committee, which is led by Gwendolyn Miller, because we have done a wonderful scholarship recruitment program, had a good response to it, found some very well qualified students, and we will be giving out 6 scholarships at 4 different high schools. It was not limited to Cape Henlopen. And so we think it's a great accomplishment. We thank you and your committee for what you did for it. Expungement update. Actually, I would rather you do the expungement update.
I think I can do it from here. I'll speak up. We have very good news today. The Office of Defense Services has confirmed that the Sussex County expungement clinic for those with juvenile records who qualify will be August 16th at the Georgetown Library. We are in a bit of a bind in trying to find candidates. We need your help. If you know someone who has a juvenile record, please encourage them to go to the Office of Defense Services website. They can register. We need to have the registrations done by the 12th of June because of a hiccup with the fingerprinting people. We've at least got them so that we can do it, but we do need your help. If you know of people or know others who might be in contact with people who have juvenile records, please encourage them to be in touch with the Office of Defense Services. We'll be looking for some volunteers later in the summer to help with calls and with the clinic, but very good news from the ODS.
It's a real important program, and I hope I can depend on all of you. If you can help us identify those children we can't identify by ourselves, that if you know children, please follow the directions that Nancy just gave us. And with that, I'm going to give up speaking and turn the meeting over to Gwendolyn, who will do us the honor of introducing our Attorney General. And we all look forward to hearing from her. Oh, one other thing, I'm sorry. In the back, we have an insert from the Washington Post that came out on May 1st. And it has 5 powerful articles relating to African American history. One is about the first woman slave that came to these shores. One is about the early entrance into Jamestown. There will be many celebrations around the country because, I don't know about celebrations, memorials, if you want to call it that, in terms of the beginning of that part of America's history. One that people think we've talked a lot about, but actually we haven't talked enough. I would suggest, if you can, to pick up a copy. We had 1 copy, and Drew McKay, who can do anything, managed to get us 200 copies from the Washington Post, and I appreciate that. So please, we're leaving some copies here. We hope to get some into the schools, because this is what our children should be reading. It's well written, it's simple, it's clear, and it really tells a good story. So if you'd like, we have copies in the back. Thank you, and I'm sorry for the interruption. I'm leaving.
I hope you're not leaving.
No, I'm going to sit in the back and listen to it.
Good evening. My name is Gwendolyn moderator for tonight's program, Revisions of the Delaware Criminal Code. Following my introduction and our guest speaker, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. We are at one of the most critical periods in the history of the state of Delaware. Under consideration is what has been described as the boldest package of criminal justice reforms in modern Delaware history. This package contains 19 separate bills that would lessen the prison population, reduce sentences, and make it easier for offenders to reintegrate back into society. After years of public service in the Delaware Department of Justice and successful private practice, then Attorney General Beau Biden asked Kathleen Jennings to return to the Delaware Department of Justice and serve as State Prosecutor, supervising criminal prosecution statewide. Kathy's work included reforming habitual offender laws, strengthening gun laws involving violent felons, and creating the Child Victim Unit. Under Attorney General Biden's leadership, Kathy formed the Crime Strategic Unit and focused on work directly in the areas of high incidences of violent crime. Kathy also collaborated with the police to formulate Delaware's first model policy for police wearing body cameras and secured funds to supply the life-saving drug Narcan to the police agencies statewide. As the newly elected 46th Attorney General of the state of Delaware, she is committed to making the criminal justice system fair, equal, and accessible to every person, regardless of the age, the race, the income, or the zip code. This evening, we are honored to have with us one of the leaders in moving forward this initiative. Please give a warm Sussex County welcome to tonight's speaker, Attorney General Kathleen Jennings.
Thank you, Gwen. I think you were talking about me, and it just sounded so good coming from you. I hardly knew or recognized, but thank you so much. That was very kind of you. And thank you. It's an honor to be here this evening among friends. I have been in the campaign up and down the state and met many of you. Also in the audience are old friends. But I can tell you that I've acquired so many new friends along the way, and many of them, if not most of them, live in Sussex County. It's just gratifying to know how much you care about the criminal justice system and its impact on everyone around us, on people we love, sometimes on ourselves, on our relatives, our friends, our neighbors. And that's what we're here to really talk about tonight. As Gwen said, I ran for office because I believe that Delaware can be indeed a safer place for all of us to live, to work, to raise our children. And at the same time, we can make our criminal justice system fairer and more equal for everyone, regardless of the color of our skin, the size of our wallet, or the zip code where we live. And in running for office, that was my mantra, that is my mission. And in being in office, now that I've been there all of almost 5 months, it's just flown by. This is the best job in the world. It is the best job I could ever imagine doing. Thank you for the support I received along this path, because I'll wake up in the morning and I am so happy to get to work and so happy to make the changes that are so badly needed in our system, and to begin the hard work of winning over those hearts and minds we have not yet won over, to make sure that Delaware is a model for true justice. In my career as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, and in the 133 days that I've been your Attorney General, I've been reminded every day of how important the work of the Department of Justice is. Has been, is, and will be in the future. From our mission to protect public safety, to consumer protection, to our role in fighting and helping to alleviate the opioid crisis. Prosecutors in our office do work day to day to ensure that our families go to sleep at night feeling safe, that our laws are upheld, and the public can trust that the justice system will treat everyone fairly. At the same time, I have been committed from day one to using the Attorney General's office's unique voice and role to change our system, to reduce recidivism and the collateral consequences of a criminal record, to ensure that our charging and sentencing are proportionate to the facts, and to be a voice for reform in the system that we work each day to honor and protect. Many of you know this, but I'll just take a moment to describe the jurisdiction of the Delaware Attorney General, because it is much broader than almost anywhere else in the United States. In Delaware, the Attorney General has full criminal jurisdiction. There are no district attorneys, there are no county prosecutors. It is all housed in the Attorney General's office. And those prosecutions include everything from traffic tickets to serial murder. And so we are almost unique in this country in that we have a criminal division devoted to criminal justice. That gives us a really unique opportunity in Delaware to make change on a statewide basis. So think about it. In most states, and all of our surrounding states, there are county prosecutors. And even in Philadelphia, where Larry Krasner's been doing some amazing work, he is a county prosecutor. He's the Philadelphia DA. And that means his jurisdiction is Philadelphia. So if Larry Krasner says, I want to make change in my office, he can do that. And if he says, I want to make change in Harrisburg, he can't do that. It's very hard to build a coalition to make change at the state law level. Here, it can happen. It is happening, and it's what I'm focused on right now. So we have that unique jurisdiction. We also have unique jurisdiction. I know we're not here to talk about it tonight, but I just digress a little bit, because some of your questions may be aimed at this. We have full consumer fraud jurisdiction, both criminal and civil, to get at frauds and scams that affect so many of us in this state. We have civil rights jurisdiction, and we are right now seeking to codify that jurisdiction in the legislature to guarantee that the Attorney General's office will be the office that protects your civil rights, and that you will have a place to go to say, my rights were violated, I would like you to look into this. The Office of Civil Rights and Public Trust in the Attorney General's office has jurisdiction over all police-involved shootings, violations of the public trust, including harm that may be caused by public officials. You may have read about the prosecution of the Wilmington fire chief recently, who is now serving a prison sentence. That was handled by the Office of Civil Rights and Public Trust. It is designed to restore and to guarantee trust in our government. We have a civil division that represents all state agencies throughout our state. So you name a state agency, we represent them, and we provide legal advice, and that's a whole separate division in the office. As you can see, our jurisdiction is pretty widespread. I have spent quite a lot of time since I became Attorney General on January 1st, focused on criminal justice reform, but I've also been focused on civil rights and trying to get laws into place that strengthen our ability to enforce civil rights. When I believe Delawareans are affected by decisions made in Washington, D.C. by our current administration, The attorneys general across the country are the ones who have stood up to defend our rights and to prevent the rollback of our civil rights, our hard-fought civil rights that I know many of you in this room have fought so hard, Peter, over the years to make sure that they did not roll back, and they will not roll back as long as I am Attorney General in Delaware. And many, many attorneys general across the country feel the same. It gives us a strength to stand up to the administration when we believe that they are either interpreting the law wrong or violating the law. For example, if you recall, there was a plan to change the federal rules to make possible offshore oil drilling off our coast. Well, that was an instance when Republican and Democratic attorneys general along coastal states banded together, and we said, not so easy. And we filed actions to prevent that from happening. And so very, very important issues are being litigated every day across America. And so we also recently signed on to a lawsuit in Connecticut to fight generic drug manufacturers because we believe they have fixed prices which account for a why when you go to a drugstore. If it's a generic drug, you're still paying way too much. So nationwide, attorneys general have banded together to file that lawsuit, and the Connecticut Attorney General was on 60 Minutes Sunday night to talk about it. But tonight, we're here to talk about criminal justice, and so I'll get back on message. Whenever we look to change things, it's so easy for me to say, you need to change, you need to change, you need to change. But the hardest thing is to look inside ourselves and say, how do I need to change? How can I open my own eyes and see that practices and policies that may have been in place inside my office when I was a prosecutor may be harming the cause of justice and not helping the cause of justice? And so on January 2nd, we convened an internal working group in our office, and we said, let's look inside ourselves and see what we can do to fix what we know we can change to make the criminal justice system more fair and equal for everyone. And I believe that we can and we have taken action to uphold the ideals that the people of Delaware expect of us. The mission was, what can we do differently without changing one law that will make the system more fair? In February, I announced a series of changes. They are guidelines that guide prosecutors from that date forward that they must follow. For every rule, there is an exception. We know that because prosecutors' decisions are very individualized to a given case, so we want to give them discretion and freedom, but we want to make sure they have clear guidelines and a clear mission from our office. We announced approximately 30-some changes, and we put it up on our website, so it is publicly available to you. These internal reforms did get national attention from groups who have been looking for criminal justice reform, and now I'm really proud and honored to say that other attorneys general in the country are enacting reforms based on what we did, including the Attorney General in Nevada, Aaron Ford. So we're very proud of this work. This work is going to be very important to track and to make sure that we are on top of each and every day as we look at the thousands of cases that are handled within our office. Some of the highlights of those internal reforms are as follows. We will adopt an office-wide presumption not to charge multiple minimum mandatory crimes when one crime accounts for the facts of a given event. That will cut down on the stacking of minimum mandatory crimes on top of one another that lead to numbers of years in prison without making us safer and without accounting for what's right in the individual case. Recognizing the devastation of the opioid epidemic, the role of addiction and mental health in crime, and and the fact that the path to recovery is never linear. We will support alternatives to criminalizing addiction and mental illness by diverting low-level offenders to evidence-based treatment programs and away from the system altogether, when it's safe to do so. We will refrain from ever imposing or asking a judge to impose zero-tolerance conditions upon people seeking drug, alcohol, or mental health treatment, because the path is never smooth. It is rocky, it's up, it's down, we know it now, and it makes no sense to impose zero tolerance. You're setting someone up for complete failure. We will utilize discretion to divert more people from the criminal justice system based upon their need for treatment. I have asked police agencies statewide, and I see our chief from Milton, Chief Longa, in the audience. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, ma'am.
We have asked police chiefs statewide to utilize civil citations for possession of marijuana whenever and wherever they can, and not to make an arrest. Because as we know, an arrest alone makes it very difficult for someone to get a job. Even if that arrest is eventually expunged, it takes a while. We will limit collateral consequences of convictions by continuing to consider whether a person doesn't have to go to prison in the first place, and whether they can be safely housed outside of prison, including under house arrest with GPS monitoring if necessary. Our presumptive bail request, because we still do, unfortunately, have a money-based bail system, although some reforms have occurred. Our presumptive bail request for misdemeanor offenses will be unsecured bail, release on your own recognizance, so that we aren't imprisoning people because they're too poor to pay for bail. We will encourage alternatives to prosecution for crimes, like I said, simple possession of marijuana and prostitution. I am proud to say, in my entire career as a prosecutor, I never once prosecuted prostitution, and I don't intend to ever prosecute prostitution. We need to help people, and that's not a crime that I think merits our resources, for sure. What merits our resources is finding help for people who are the victims of trafficking, who grew up in a world of abuse, who may be addicted, who may have mental health problems. Prosecution is not the answer. We will limit probation recommendations to 1 year maximum unless the conviction is for a violent felony or top-tier crime. And that is because science tells us, evidence tells us, that more than a year gets us nothing. If someone is going to violate their probation, it is almost always within that first year. Let's give them a chance to succeed and not have that hanging over people's heads for years and years the way it used to be. We will take collateral consequences into account when we fashion a plea resolution or a sentencing resolution. Collateral consequences bar people from housing, jobs, and everything that they need to become law-abiding citizens. And so we need to be aware of what those collateral consequences are and take them into account and make sure we're giving somebody a chance. We will oppose the issuance of arrest warrants or the revocation of driving privileges when someone fails to pay a fine when they are without the ability to pay. There will be a bill in the legislature introduced to do just that. I support it. It is called unwarranted, because when a fine is imposed upon someone and they have no ability to pay, when they don't pay, an arrest warrant issues for them, they're locked up, they lose their job, they are back in jail until they can be heard by a judge, and guess what? They still can't pay the fine. So what have we accomplished? Except we've cost that person their livelihood, and it cost us as taxpayers to house that person for no good result whatsoever. So there will be legislation to do away with that practice. We will support liberally support expungements for arrest for crimes that are now legal, but when they were arrested, they were illegal. Simple possession of marijuana, marijuana paraphernalia, and the like. We will liberally support expungements for those. We will support pardon applications when a person applies in connection with a nonviolent crime and has demonstrated sufficient rehabilitation. Let me digress for a moment and tell you the story of a young man named Corey Priest, and I use his name with his permission. Corey grew up on the east side of Wilmington, and he got into trouble. He needed money. He started dealing drugs. He got arrested for trafficking in marijuana. He was dealing a lot of marijuana. And he went to jail. He went to jail, I think, for a couple of years, so he was in Smyrna prison. And while he was in jail, first of all, when he got sentenced to jail, because it was required for the crime, it was mandatory, it was a minimum mandatory sentence. When he got sent to jail, the judge just knew there was something about Corey, and she never forgot him. And when he was in jail, he really made a change in his own life. Not because he had great counseling, not because he had great drug treatment, but because he realized, I can't keep living this life. So he came out and he worked really hard. He had nothing. He had no money, he had nothing. And he went back into the neighborhood where he grew up and where he started to get into trouble. But there was something that clicked in Corey. Corey got himself a job. He started getting an education. He is now a college graduate. He has worked at the Achievement Center, the Reentry Center in Northeast Wilmington. That's where I met Corey, because I've worked there for many years. And Corey was doing remarkable work, finding people inside the prison who he thought could come out and go into the Achievement Center, helping them get housing, helping them get job training, helping them get back on their feet, and helping them comply with probation. Not an easy task, but Corey took it on with his full heart, and he did a phenomenal job. So Corey, several years after his conviction, applies for a pardon. I said, well, I'll go down to the pardon board and appear with you, and others said the same thing. They volunteered their time and they went down. I found out later, because Corey didn't tell me, and I wasn't in the Attorney General's office when I was down there, but he said, the office opposed my pardon. Why in the world would you oppose Corey Priest's pardon? He served his time. He became a model citizen. He's there helping people. Yet, as a matter of sort of bureaucratic thinking, we opposed his pardon. Now, he got a pardon. It was unanimous, and the governor signed it. And I am really proud to say that Corey is working in our office now. And if he was here tonight, and I wish he was, he would say to you, who would have ever thought that me, Corey Priest, a former prisoner, is working for the Department of Justice? But it's just a wonderful feeling, and I know there's so many more Corey Priests out there. We just need to make sure we're helping them, and we're not harming. So those are some of the things we've been advocating for inside the office, and we've started to notice a change. I've had judges already say to me, hey, things are better. We're really liking this. And all the judges receive copies of the policy, so they wouldn't hesitate to call me and say otherwise. And attorneys who represent individuals accused of crime have also started to notice a change. It's important that we stay on top of it and we give our prosecutors the tools so that they can keep gaining a deeper understanding. And so all of our prosecutors must go to a reentry simulation that's going to be put on in a couple weeks, and it'll be a full day of learning what it's like to come out of prison, comply with probation, pay all the fees you have to pay, get a job, find a house, get your drug screens done, get everything else done that is required of you. It'll be an interesting experience. I went through it a couple of weeks ago, and I ended up back in jail, so I can tell you. But it's important. It's important that we keep teaching this, that we keep educating, because I believe that we have such great people in our office. They just don't know. You know, some people don't know unless you've been there, unless you've actually been out there and seen the net effect of the decisions you make. So that's a mission that we have. So we're also taking our mission outside of the Department of Justice. We are, as Gwen said, advocating for many, many pieces of legislation that will go a long way toward reforming our criminal justice system. Some of the legislation simplifies large parts of our criminal code in keeping with the larger code rewrite that the Chief Justice and others had been advocating for. It is not the entire code rewrite, and we'll talk about why in a couple minutes. But there are many parts of our code that are redundant, and so people get arrested like for 10 crimes when they committed basically one crime. And so the goal here is to take some of the harsher redundancies, put them under one umbrella so that people aren't being charged for different crimes when it's under one code section. So we're doing that. For example, burglary and home invasion were two separate crimes. We put them as one crime, but made an enhancement if it was a true home invasion. Burglary, home invasion are different. Burglary is breaking and entering for the purpose of committing a crime inside, usually theft. Home invasion is doing it, you know, with a weapon, doing it with force. And so we elevated the crime of burglary into home invasion, but it prevents charges for both things when they're essentially the same thing, the same act. I'm getting a little too technical here, but that's one of the things we did. Robbery and carjacking are the same thing. So we also combine those two statutes into a robbery section. Home invasion still carries a hefty sentence, a hefty minimum mandatory sentence. We see a lot of shootings and murders that start out as home invasion. So it still carries a very high sentence. But it no longer will mean you charge a bunch of crimes for what is essentially one thing. Same with robbery and carjacking, we combine those. Some of the more sort of what I think of as innovative changes in legislation, one is going to be heard in the House Judiciary Committee tomorrow. It is a change from consecutive to concurrent sentencing at judicial discretion. This single bill will do more to reform our criminal justice system than all the other bills combined. I think all of them are important, but this is the one that we have to get done. And what I mean is, when I started out as a prosecutor, and I'm never going to talk about the good old days because they were not good, they were old, they were not good days. But I will say, judges ruled the roost. And so when you went in front of a judge as a defense attorney or a prosecutor, you were an advocate, but you weren't the one making the decision. The judge was the one making the decision. Delaware has a very, very rigorous vetting system for judges. We have some of the best Superior Court judges, felony level trial court judges in the country. The vetting system is rigorous. The nomination process is rigorous. The Senate must confirm the judge. Judges are selected by the governor based on their experience, their wisdom, and their judgment. But every judge on Superior Court, if you talk to them, will tell you, I'm frustrated. If I ever leave this court, it's because I have no power over sentencing anymore. Why don't they have a power over sentencing anymore? Because of the minimum mandatories. And the minimum mandatories that get stacked on top of one another. This one bill, which by the way was the suggestion of a judge who's a friend of mine, so I didn't invent this. This one bill would enable judges to decide whether crimes are sentenced consecutively, that is stacked, or concurrently alongside one another. Most states have laws like this that give judges discretion because each case is different. And no two cases and no two individuals in the justice system are the same. And the harm done to victims are very different in different cases. And so this gives judges the much needed discretion that they have been wanting in this state for a long time. I know judges who have left Superior Court because they felt like they were frustrated. They felt like they had no say. That's not a system that's worked. It clearly doesn't work because we have a high incarceration rate, but we have a high recidivism rate. Something's really broken in our system, and that is one of those things. So let's let judges be just. Let's trust judges to figure this out. That's why we appointed them. Right now, you know who's figuring it out? Prosecutors. Because we're bargaining numbers of years in the hallways of the courthouse, and the judge has to accept that. They have to accept it because it's a bargain for resolution, or else this person is going to jail for a lot longer with the minimum mandatory sentences. And so this is the best way to get discretion back in our courts and to get back to an individualized sentencing. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this particular bill, but I think it's really important. Doesn't mean it's unguided discretion, because we know that unguided discretion has led to real racial disparities and has led to geographic disparities. The racial disparity study done by Access to Justice that I was a part of, and I've read probably 100 times this study. It's an excellent study. There were differences in counties. So Sussex County would sentence the same people, situated exactly the same, differently from Newcastle County. That's not right either. And so there needs to be guided discretion so that judges know that there are guidelines that they should follow in a given case. So it all goes hand in hand. We are supporting and have advocated strenuously for an adult expungement bill. It came before before the Senate a few weeks ago. I testified in favor of it. I said, look, you can call this an adult expungement bill. I call it an anti-crime bill and a jobs bill. It passed unanimously in the Senate. Bipartisan, not a dissenting vote. It was one of those rare good moments when you think, wow, we can get stuff done here. It's now in the House, and if they're up to the challenge, there's not going to be any dissent over there either. So we hopefully, I should knock on wood, we'll soon have an adult expungement bill that allows for automatic expungements of low-level offenses after a certain period of time and discretionary expungements of other offenses. This will get people back to work. It's a really good bill. It's a really important bill. We are also supporting a dramatic change in our drug laws. The drug laws right now result in significant racial disparities throughout our state. And what do I mean by that? We have laws that say if you possess drugs within 300 feet of a park, a playground, a church, a school, that then gets elevated to a felony. But if you live in the suburbs, it's a misdemeanor because you're not within 300 feet. In the city of Wilmington, you wake up in the morning, you're within 300 feet of one of those. So it results in real racial disparity. We asked the Statistical Analysis Center, I know I'm throwing a lot of information out at you, but we asked the Statistical Analysis Center, which is an arm of the Criminal Justice Council, what's the racial breakdown of drug arrests in this state? They did a lot of work to come up with the results, but first let me start with this. Nationwide, the Brookings Institute tells us, because they did a very in-depth study, that drug usage among races is roughly equal. Roughly equal. Drug dealing, roughly equal. In Delaware, felony-level drug arrests, 70 to 80% are African American. When it comes to misdemeanors, it flips. And the majority are white. There are complicated reasons for all that, and I don't want to make it simple, but some of the reasons for that are the built-in aggravators in our drug code that need to go away. And so our new drug bill proposes that they be eliminated and that we have a simpler, clearer drug bill. It is going to, I think, result in less incarceration in drug cases, far less, and less felony level charging decisions in drug cases as well. I am happy to say that the police are really utilizing civil citations. I see a state police officer in the back of the room. He's a community police officer, is that right, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
The use of civil citations for marijuana arrests, especially among the state police statewide, is dramatically on the rise. So that's good news. That means the people who are given civil citations are not getting arrested for possession of marijuana. I'd like to see that number keep going up because it avoids that pernicious arrest that has so many collateral consequences for people. So those are some of the legislative initiatives we have. We are supporting some other juvenile bills that increase the minimum age for handling the juvenile and family court, that also increase the age where a juvenile can be sent to be tried as an adult. The state of Delaware does have sort of a donut hole here, which I've been talking to the administration about. How do we fix this? And that is, there are probably less than a dozen children each year who commit some horrifically violent offenses. We have a child now who at age 13 shot 2 people, I believe. State and family court, the judge did not want it transferred at age 13 to adult court. And at age 15, he shot another person. So public safety alone tells us he can't safely be on the outside, but we need to do more than warehouse a child until they become an adult and then they go to adult prison. We really need to do a better job than that, and I think history will not treat us kindly if we don't open our eyes and say that's where our money needs to go. Our money really needs to go to intensive treatment. You can change hearts and minds, you can help children, but it's going to cost us money, and we have to just realize it. So I have been talking quite a bit, and in terms of other legislative updates, there's so much going on. I'm happy to talk about any subject you would like. There will be a bill reintroduced, I'm told, by Representative Smick to reinstate the death penalty this year. So here we go. I'm opposed to the death penalty, and I will oppose it. But it will be reintroduced. I have not seen it, and I look forward to seeing it. I don't know what kind of chance it has to go anywhere, but it's going to have to be determined at some point. So either this year or in the January session. But not to leave you on a down note. I have tremendous hope that we're going to get some big things done. I've mentioned a lot of them. I haven't mentioned all of them. I really do believe that this is the time for bipartisan support for real change in our criminal justice system. I've never seen it before. And I've got to tell you that no Attorney General I've ever known has advocated for it. And so there's this unusual coalition that has built up in the General Assembly of people who really believe there are injustices that need to be changed. And a lot of those are our new legislators. A lot of them are our legislators who've been around for a while in our leadership, who believe that we need dramatic change. And so the legislature's ready. I think I am definitely ready. And I believe that the public is ready. We can make Delaware safer by making the changes we're talking about, because we're going to be smarter, and we're going to give people the chances that they don't have right now, and we're going to lower that recidivism rate. So those are my goals, and I'm looking forward to your questions, but thank you for giving me your time to talk this evening.
ask your question, just one question please, and then be seated and Attorney General Jennings will answer your question. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have enlightened me, and I'm sure the rest of the audience, and I appreciate first starting to, for lack of a better word or phrase, clean your own house, and then start to fix the areas and surrounding areas around you. My question is, are you or is somebody keeping some kind of statistics or database of those changes that you're making, so that if ever asked, well, how many things have, or how many people have you helped or changed from the internal changes that you've made, and also some of the external? And that's my question. Thank you.
That's a very good question, and thank you for your kind comments. We've got this really antiquated system in the Attorney General's office. I've been hearing for 7 years now that we're going to get this great JustWare system any day now. So we don't have a very good data system to measure everything. We heavily rely on the statewide databases like DELGIS and the Criminal Justice Council's Statistical Analysis Center to help us. But we are doing a lot of analyses internally to figure out how do we measure the net effect of our internal changes. And it's almost impossible to measure that without including the legislative changes, because they're all occurring in the same year, hopefully. What I think measures our success rate the best is whether the recidivism rate keeps coming down. At the same time, the crime rate keeps coming down. At the same time, the rate of incarceration keeps coming down. I mean, those three measures are extremely important. That's why we're doing what we're doing. But to measure each and every case right now on our database is going to be a little tough. And again, I think there are a combination of factors going on everywhere. For example, and I won't talk too long on your question, but for example, nationally, the rate of domestic violence deaths, so deaths attributed to domestic violence, is going up. People are trying to figure out why, what's going on nationally. The New York Times reported on it a couple weeks ago. And it is going up somewhat in Delaware. And so there are things that do happen that you say, you scratch your head, you say, why? But we need to work on this. We need to immediately turn our attention to this and try to fix it, because that's not okay. For years and years, they have been trending down. And so an immediate uptick, or an uptick that occurs over a year or 2 year period, is something that's going to get our attention. It's complex. The criminal justice system is complex. Deciding what's working, not working is complex, but I think those are the best measures for us.
Thank you for coming tonight. I can't speak for everybody here, but if I were to go by the mm-hms and yeses when you spoke, I would say that most people were very much appreciative of what you were saying. So my question is, what can we do to support you and to make happen what you want to have happen?
Sure. I am glad you asked that question, because the best support I can have, first of all, is your involvement. You're here tonight because you really deeply care. But talk to your legislators, write to your legislators, call your legislators, email your legislators. Every legislator in this state pays attention to their constituents. Everyone. And it moves the needle. It really does. It moves the needle, because some of what we're asking legislators to do requires a leap of faith. Giving judges back discretion, taking power away from prosecutors. There are some people who've never known a different system. And we're all comfortable in the way things are, even when we know they're not working. So some of this will be a real battle, and if you would make sure that you stay on top of what bills are coming up when. It's on the General Assembly website. We can help sort of guide you there and guide you to the calendar and the schedules each week. A.J. DeLeon, who works with me, was a legislative aide, so he can tell you after the meeting exactly how to figure those things out.
On our website.
And then just make sure you're staying on top of it. Write to your legislators. Make sure they know.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming down. I have a question. I got a hold of some statistics. Law enforcement. In 2016, there were approximately 1,500 plus people arrested that were prohibited. They were arrested for either carrying ammunition or a gun. 70% of those cases were plea bargained away. So if they're prohibited, it's not their first time in front of a judge. Why do the prosecutors do this? I can imagine, they get another notch on their conviction list. Is it because it's too expensive to house them? I mean, you do that, and you're sending a shooter back out on the street. You got a revolving door. Because with a gun charge, he's going to go away for X number of years longer than if he didn't have the gun charge.
So it's not correct at all that 70% of the cases are dismissed. Not correct at all.
I didn't say dismissed. I said they were plea bargained down.
And that's not correct either.
Okay.
Let me explain the truth, because we did an in-depth study of this, and you may recall I wrote an op-ed in the News Journal a couple of years ago that explained this. If you have a murder case, and the murderer is with a gun, and the person pleads guilty to murder in the first degree, the gun charge gets dropped, that person's going to jail for the rest of his life. Yet, what the statistics will say is, we dropped all the gun charges. That's the easiest example I can give you, but we did not let that guy walk away. If you have a robbery first degree charge and a gun, again, if it is pled, and by the way, I'm happy not to plead cases. I'm going to need about 100 more prosecutors, and I don't think the General Assembly is giving those to me. So plea bargaining is a reality in this state and every other state in this country. So given that reality, given the lack of resources, if you have a robbery one case with a gun, and the guy pleads guilty to robbery one, his jail sentence is minimum mandatory 3 years in jail, up to 25 years in jail. But if the gun charge gets dropped and he's doing 25 years in jail, guess what? That case shows up as a dropped gun charge. So I know that I have had several very lively debates about this issue with our friends in opposite sides on gun safety laws. But I can tell you right now that is a statistic that is not correct, and it is misused in the advocacy world for why gun safety laws shouldn't be enacted. But I appreciate your passion about it, and I'd be happy to send you the article that explains in detail how gun cases are handled in this state.
Again, thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to qualify who I am so that you know why I'm asking the question. I'm a pastor as well as a business owner. I've been a business owner 26 years out of 40 years I've been in ministry. And I give work to guys that are on probation, guys and women, they're on probation or work release. I'm encouraged to hear the word common sense on the front end, but you're talking about the disproportionate problem with recidivism. I was really excited to hear you say that people are going to have to go through this model reentry program to see what's really going on, because quite frankly the reentry system is broken really, did I say really enough?
One more time.
Okay, really broken. Okay, like for example, as a business owner, I tried for 5 years to get connected into the IADAP program. It is terrible.
Yeah.
Okay? It doesn't work. They have to enter into the IDEP program before they even get, their head about themselves while they're in prison. They don't even know about it. And when they get out, they can't get into it, it's too late. The bonding program doesn't work, okay, for the business owner. Tried for 5 years to get, 5 people bonded. Couldn't get it done.
Your
Okay.
question, sir?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Well, what
The bottom question is, for the reentry problems, who do we go to for answers to try to help get it fixed? Who do we ask? Because I've talked to legislators, I've talked to the people in the programs, the task programs. There's a lot of those things that are broken. Where do we go to try to help be part of the solution and ask for help to get it fixed?
Well, thank you so much for hiring people and for trying. And what type of business? Can I just have an understanding of?
Power washing is one is a
Okay.
supply company, another company is screen printing, embroidery, promotional products.
All right. So this is what I hear from employers all over the state, especially in the building trades. We have contractors who have hired, just as you have, people coming out of prison. They train them. They're trained to perform a livable wage job. Drywall hangers, electricians, plumbers, people in all aspects of the trades. They can't get them on job sites because of the bonding issue.
And a driver's license.
And a driver's license. And so there are all these impediments. We have a couple of business associations who are willing to talk to legislators as a group. And in fact, on the adult expungement bill, they came down and testified in Legislative Hall and said, this needs to change. We can't find skilled laborers, and there's a pool of people we could hire, much as you have. We can't get them on a job site. And so some of the bills that are proposed this year that I haven't discussed in detail or at all tonight are bills that would enable people to get licenses as an electrician, licenses to do certain building trades like HVAC. And so these are little changes, and I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it best, real change, meaningful change begins one change at a time. Unfortunately, that is so true. But our eyes are open about this, and I saw it at the Achievement Center. People come out, they're doing the really hard work of changing their own behavior, their own thinking. People who've never held jobs in their lives, who are willing and able and ready to have a job, and they can't get a livable wage job. And so there's a lot of work being done to change those things, but it's not going to happen overnight. But I appreciate it because I'm with you. It's a really broken. I agree.
I'd like to thank you first for addressing many of the issues that contribute to prison overcrowding, which is one of the banes of our country's existence to start with. And I wish you luck trying with the politicians that run on platforms of getting tough on crime and draconian sentencing. But now, for punishment to be effective and to be a deterrent, it must be swift, which it's not. It must be certain, which it's not. And it must be categorical, that it applies to everyone the same, which it does not. And I'm hoping that, you have an answer to that, and that, that would really help, I think, everyone know, like Corey, he's supposed to be able to return to society without stigma, but unfortunately that has never changed. So there's a lot of issues before you, but it's wonderful that you are addressing those issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and you're right. It still needs to be changed. Absolutely needs to be changed. And so I don't think there are as many legislators saying lock people up and throw away the key, because they've now seen the price tag and then that affects them. of that system, and they've also seen that it failed.
Yeah.
And so we are, I think, seeing changes in attitudes, which is what we need to see to get bills passed. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your presentation. Am I correct in assuming that if you see, if we as a society, as citizens see, the 3 goals that you enumerated realized, that there will be savings to the people of Delaware for that? It's so expensive, I know, to keep anyone in prison, and that's just one of the things you cited. Is that an accurate assumption?
So it costs approximately $35,000 a year to house one person in prison. You can't achieve the savings by a small reduction, because unless you can absolutely close down a wing of the prison, Rick and Rachel, you're there more often than I am these days, but unless you can shut down an entire wing, you have a certain amount of fixed costs that go into maintaining a prison system. But you can begin to see the savings with a substantial reduction. And we have seen over the past several years, it may not feel like it, but we have seen about a 7% reduction in the prison population over the last 7 or 8 years. And we have seen a more substantial reduction in the pretrial detention population. I think that's about 10%. And most of that is because of the reforms in the bail system. I think we can continue to see that if we can safely treat people on the outside. And so at some point, it will save money, but it has to be at a point where you can have a significant reduction in the cost. Having said that, we need more programs in prisons. We need more effective programs. I've heard numbers from the head of the Correctional Association that as many as 70 to 80% of people inside prison need substance abuse help. I mean, effective substance abuse help. And they're not getting it. And so you can cut costs, but the long-term way of cutting recidivism is to start inside the prison and make sure that there are really good programs that cut down on recidivism.
That's what my next question was.
Sorry, excuse me, we have some more questions, so we'll allow the next
It's
person
related.
to ask.
I wanted to relate just one.
Sue.
This
person is waiting to ask the question. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
My question is, I don't know how your budget is, or how the Department of Justice. My question is, if in fact you do save those monies, do you then have the discretion to appropriate them into the rehabilitative needs that you addressed?
So no, I don't have any control over the budget. That's not me. I have no control over the budget of the Department of Correction. But I can tell you that the Department of Correction budget is about $305 million a year. The budget for all of Newcastle County government is $295 million a year. That
So it's a
includes
line
police,
item
paramedics, and everything else that the counties do, parks. So it's a big budget. It's gigantic.
But it's
And I
line
think-
item.
So Claire, we have just a few more minutes, so the next person, please ask your question. Thank you.
But anyway, it's set by the governor and then approved, the budget overall is approved by the legislature.
All right, thank you very much. With the diversion option or recommendation in your list of recommendations for the prosecutors, I'm wondering if you have any experience yet that you can tell us about whether they have been able to find diversion programs to put people into rather than cause, arrest them or
Yeah, right. Rather than jail.
Yes. So there are programs statewide.
Yeah, like
There-
corrections?
Yeah. There are programs statewide, but there is a real paucity of substance abuse treatment in Sussex County. And there is a lack of choice of treatment. I just don't believe one size fits all. And, you know, right now we got one size fits all. And I think Matt Den, the former Attorney General, did an absolutely amazing job of laying out this issue. It needs resources. And so we have a lawsuit pending against opioid manufacturers, distributors, who I believe committed fraud and are largely responsible for the addiction to opioids that we have seen in this country. If we are successful in that lawsuit, the goal is it goes to treatment. Because they cause the harm, they should pay for the treatment. And so it's not going to be a quick solution. We're at the beginning of this lawsuit, and there are attorneys general all over the country sort of grappling with, you know, what would a settlement look like, what, you know, how much money, how do you divide it up among the states, and so there are a lot of issues that have to be resolved, but that's one way of finding treatment dollars that are dire. We have a dire need for an increase in the amount of treatment and an increase in the different types of treatment. The same with mental health. Same with mental health. And oftentimes they're related.
I'm a little, it's just a little disheartening when I hear, I'm glad what you're saying actually is very good to hear, because especially the expungement of the nonviolent records is huge. I can say for over 20 years, I'm also an employer, I'm a restaurateur, and you know, I've worked up and down the state. I've had a lot of good kids that were drug dealers, they're waiting to go, you know, through their trial, and some of them are scared, and some of them have been through it, and they know the game, and they really didn't worry about it. And if they don't get the record expunged, we all know where that's going to end, no matter what. The thing that I'm hearing, and what I find is very confusing, is it just sounds like we have too many laws, and we've had, I'm just going to use 20 years that I'm experienced with, that I can well, personal experience. When you tell the police, this is what we're going to, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying over that period. You tell the police, this is what we're going to do, go do your job. They do their job too well, per se, at this point that we're looking at, because there's so many people in prison filling it up that really don't belong there and probably never needed to. So I thought it was a legislative type of thing that needed to be done. And I've talked to numerous legislators and whatnot, but what I'm hearing from you is that the power really was with the prosecutors. They could have pled these nonviolent offenses over all this time, and I don't understand now, especially budget-wise.
Sir, what is your question for the Attorney General?
How are you going to make these permanent with prosecutors, where we can kind of start rebuilding this and move on to that next, where you're talking about rehab, because the money needs to stay in rehab, especially the drug offenders and mental health.
Okay, let's allow her a few minutes to answer your question. Thank you.
You said a lot, I know.
You did, but it's all right. Okay. So part of the problem was policies and practices within our own office. And I think we are coming along quite well, both in acceptance of change, in buy-in of change. You know, the world hasn't fallen apart. We're doing just fine. So as soon as prosecutors get comfortable with the changes, and I think they are, we're going to see a difference. But some of this is legislative. Some of it's legislative because we need to get judges back into the game where they're exercising guided discretion, and that's a legislative change. I can't make that change myself. So we do need the legislature to make some of the changes. So some of it's internal, some of it's legislative, and some of it, quite frankly, I think our police officers do a really good job. Community policing is amazing. It is amazing. I've seen it in the state police, I've seen it in the county police, I have seen it in Milton. Where's our Milton Chief? He's still here. And we don't, and I've talked to hundreds of police officers, most recently, many, many meetings with police chiefs. They understand the issues that they're facing. It's a matter of all of us changing our approach. Because the police are problem solvers, first and foremost. They're problem solvers. And when you have all these laws that punish so severely in a cookie-cutter fashion, that's not the police fault. That's the fault of the lawmakers and the people who aren't changing those laws. So I think we're about to see a change, and I'm very hopeful that we are. I've seen a big change in police officers over the years. Huge support for community policing, huge support for alternatives. I attended a conference recently. It was police officers helping people who were in mental health crisis, people who had gambling addiction and other addictions, divert away from the system altogether. I'm seeing a lot of people be part of this solution. But thank you for your question.
Thank you for being here tonight. I wanted to just highlight one thing to you before I ask my short question. Tomorrow, one of our members, as a result of the Advocacy Committee's work under the chair of Nancy Powell and with the help of Sandy Spence, who just asked a question, Bruce Boland is testifying before the House on 3 bills. And this is part of what the Alliance is doing. We are engaged in the legislature, and we are up there. He's testified a couple of times recently, but he has 3 different appearances tomorrow, just as an FYI. So this is not just town hall meetings. We're hitting the rubber meeting the road. We're going up and doing our work up there.
Oh, I see everybody. I see the people in the audience who I see in Legislative Hall.
But my question goes back to something you alluded to but didn't really answer, which is during the campaign we spoke with you and you talked about supporting the comprehensive criminal justice reform. And you said here you were going to get to it, but you kind of got distracted. We are still wondering why that massive package, why the smaller package replacing the massive criminal code is not going forward. Instead of dealing it piecemeal with now 19 bills, was 13, now 19, that are piecemeal going after some of the fundamental problems, why are you not supporting the comprehensive change to the criminal code?
I am actually supporting a comprehensive change to the criminal code. The code rewrite, I've met probably a dozen times with various advocates for the code rewrite, including the Chief Justice on multiple occasions, as well as my good friends, Judge Wharton, Adam Bailey, Bart Dalton, people who are advocating for it. And the truth of the matter is, I'll just put it out there, there's no appetite for it in the legislature. None. And the reason is, it is so massive. I'm having trouble getting our bills, our individual bills, passed without a ton of amendments along the way. You know how it works there. You know, there are amendments all the time to bills. And so, if we're having that much trouble just simply combining robbery and carjacking into one bill to make it simpler, which is largely taken wholesale out of this code rewrite. Same with home invasion and burglary, taken wholesale out of the code rewrite. I want to get the best parts of that code rewrite done. I don't think it should sit there, you know, in somebody's storage closet. I think it needs to work. But it's hard to just get one bill on one subject matter passed. There is no appetite to do an entire rewrite of our criminal code all at once. There isn't. I wish there were. I wish we could all say, okay, tomorrow we're going to walk in, we're going to sit down, we're going to work on this thing for the next 3 months, and we're going to get it done. But it doesn't have sponsors. It has one sponsor.
Well, since I only asked one question, I won't ask any more, but we should talk about it afterward, because I think there is a different strategy applicable that needs to come from the Attorney General. But
okay, and more power to you, but I'm a realist. And I've got to say, I'm going to get done what I can get done, and I think we can get done a lot this year.
We're running out of time. Quick question and a quick answer before we go.
Okay, hi Kathy, my name is Mary. You had brought up the topic of why the rate of murder with domestic violence has gone up, and I know the answer for that. And my question to you is, are you doing anything to help protect the victim where they do not feel re-victimized when they go through the legal process, because I have been dragged through hell. I have a 100-year PFA against a man, and he never is held accountable, ever. He has broken into my house. You know, my doors are ripped off, and the police let him out that night without telling me, and I feel like, you know, everything's geared on helping the criminal, and I want to know what you're doing for people like me, that, you know, you wake up happy every day. I wake up scared to death, frustrated, and angry. And I don't want to live like that. I don't. And I feel like nothing's being done.
Well, I'm so sorry, and I do want to talk to you about your individual case, and I'll look into it. I promise you that. I can tell you I prosecuted domestic violence cases for years. And I can also tell you they all got prosecuted. You have to be devoted. You have to be intensely devoted to making sure that the victim is safe and to making sure that there is justice. It is so hard on victims of domestic violence, I realize. So let's talk after this, and I'll, you know, take down information so that we can get back to you.
I have a question. Sorry, I know I'm the man.
It's your province.
It's your province.
And I truly appreciate
She made me this way.
I truly appreciate everything you said. And obviously you're into rehabilitation, you're into better reentry services, but money is not the issue. There is a organization that does substance abuse for those coming out of, and they get $60 million from the Department of Correction. They also get a significant amount of money from the Criminal Justice Council, and I believe they got money from Matt then when he was, and they probably still do. And I noticed the organization was mentioned, and everyone laughed. And that's part of our attitude these days. Bad things become the norm. We have the money to do better. Who is there within, maybe it's not within your system, but I hope it is within your system, to do something about the money that is wasted by the criminals who are outside of the prisons?
Okay, so the reason I moved on when that got said is that we announced today that we have opened a criminal investigation.
Thank you so much.
I can't comment on
No,
it.
and I appreciate that.
And so it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I think your questions were outstanding, and I hope we can continue to work together. I hope to continue to see you in Legislative Hall. You make a huge difference by being there and by contacting your legislators. So I'll be back down as often as I can and as often as you invite me. Thank you.